Welcome to Fly Fishing Secrets. I'm Dave McMillan, your host. Today, fly fishers are in for a real visual treat. We'll follow Gary Borger to New Zealand. The beauty of that country is spectacular. The pristine streams hold enormous trout. Next, we'll follow Steve Rajeff to the Texas coast, where he's going to show us an extraordinary selection of inshore flies for the saltwater species such as redfish, speckled trout, snook, flounder, maybe even a sheep's head. Our third episode is going to feature Lee Wolf. We call this section our Cast from the Past. We'll go back 30 years in time, and we'll follow Lee Wolf to the Rocky Mountains, where he's going to catch a beautiful brown trout on a 6-weight fly rod. He's going to show us how useful a short rod can be to a fly fisherman as the trout tries to escape and Lee has to pass the fly rod under logs and through brush. It should be extremely exciting.
The South Island of New Zealand is situated in the southern temperate zone, some 1,200 miles east of Australia. A high mountain chain, the Southern Alps, runs the full length of the island, reaching its pinnacle in majestic Mount Cook, which soars to 12,349 feet. The native Maori call it Orangi, which means cloud piercer. The South Island owes its cold water fishery to these snow-capped mountain peaks, for they provide a year-round supply of icy waters to feed the rivers. The mountains also act as a climatic barrier, dividing the island into a wet side and a dry side. The wet west coast receives from 70 inches of rainfall per year in the north to over 300 inches in the south, and the land is often covered with dense forests of trees and giant ferns. Because the mountains rake the moisture from the sky, the east side of the island receives little rainfall from the prevailing west winds. Here the land is often parched and the country open. But cool streams flow from the high country through this semi-arid land, and the trout are there. The trout of New Zealand are mostly rainbows and browns. The rainbows are a steelhead strain that came from California in 1883. The browns were introduced from England by way of Tasmania in 1878. Both species have adapted very well. New Zealand rivers harbor 25 species of mayfly nymphs. Most are amber or rusty brown. There are 40 species of stonefly nymphs of brown, black, or emerald green. 140 species of caddisflies are found here, including these net builders. And there's one abundant species of large, pugnacious fish fly. Best nymph patterns to imitate these insects are the hair-legged version of the gold-ribbed hare's ear in sizes 10 through 18, the red-brown nymph in sizes 10 through 14, green, gray, or tan fur caddis larvae in sizes 10 through 14, and dark brown and emerald hair-leg woolly worms in sizes 6 through 10. Fortunately, the trout of New Zealand are not particularly leader shy. The standard leader here is 9 to 12 feet long, and you can often fool the fish on a 3 or 4X tippet. When the surface is choppy, even in water this clear, it pays to have a partner help you get into position.
A couple more feet over this way. Huh? Yeah, right in there.
That's where he was, yeah. There you go.
It's not necessary to use a heavy rod in New Zealand. An 8 1/2 foot 6-weight is ideal, but it's a good idea to have at least 50 yards of backing on your reel. The reel should turn smoothly to prevent the tippet from breaking when the fish makes a fast run, because even though the tippet is 3 or 4x, a good fish in these currents will strain your tackle to its limits. The average New Zealand trout is over 20 inches long, and so requires some skill to play. Wade after the fish when you can, and keep it on a short line where you can control its movements. Play the fish from the reel and use side pressure from the rod to make the fish work harder in the current. Lift the rod overhead when the fish runs or snubs its nose in the gravel. This helps keep the line clear of the rocks. And then, with your pulse pounding in your ears from the excitement of the battle, you give the fish back to the pellucid waters to fight another day.
New Zealand is a beautiful country. Every fly fisherman should try to make it there at least once during their lifetime. After these brief messages, we'll be back with Steve Rajeff. He's on the Texas coast, and he's going to show us some inshore flies for redfish, speckled trout, snook, flounder. Stay tuned.
All right, Ken, good luck. Go get him. Okay, here on the Texas coast, the predominant inshore species are redfish, speckled trout, black drum, flounder, and snook. And some of the flies that we find very effective are poppers, surface flies, middle-level flies like some streamers, and of course flies that work all the way down to the bottom, which are your crab and shrimp patterns. When we have days when we see either pushes and wakes and fish swimming close to the surface, the poppers can be very effective. If the water's clear, a little bronze-colored popper like this one here could be good. If the water is very calm, something with a little less commotion to it could be a slider. These Brooks Bolden poppers from the Angler's Edge in Houston are marvelous ties. This little slider hardly makes a wake at all coming through, but it's right up top. If the water's murky, brighter colors are very effective. Your chartreuse color or bright oranges can also be good. Sometimes if you want a lot of commotion and action, something a little longer and slender like the pencil poppers really dart and move around. That's a good one too. A little lower in the water column, streamer patterns can be real good. The deceiver types and the clouser minnow types looking like the little glass minnows and mullet can all be good. The little rattle rouser, Dietrich's rattle rouser with the little bead inside of the body making a little noise as you strip it through the water can be very effective. That sonic sound draws fish from a bit further off sometimes. Also, some of the bend-back patterns, a little more weedless, can be good. You can see a lot of grass in the flats, and ties with the wings and the hair on the top side of the hook with a little bend at the head to help keel it can be a very good way to draw these flies through without catching too much on the weeds. So this fly here would ride real effectively on the bottom and go through without picking up the grass. On the bottom, flies that get there effectively are crab patterns. This McCrab has a weight on the belly and it draws it down to the bottom, plus it has a little weed guard on it. Crustaceans, the crabs, and like the Jimmy Nix crab here, right along the bottom can be real good. Also the shrimps, the various shrimp from anywhere from a light, almost a white cream into the bronze. The shrimp patterns are one of the main sources of feed for the redfish and the drum and snook and so forth, and the shrimp patterns are a must in your tackle. Epoxy flies, such as these little silverbacks and some of the brighter colored ones here with the chartreuse. Speckled trout will pick these up as little glass minnows and little puffins and so forth. So these are really good little smaller retractor streamer patterns. These ones will go down real well. I think for today I'm going to get started out here with one of the streamers that I found here. Yeah, a little bend back streamer. I like that one. Okay, well, you know, if you have a few of these in your fly box, you're well set to get going and have a blast. I'm going to give this one a try now. Looking at a real interesting electronic device here. It's a handheld GPS plotter. Based off of satellites orbiting, I can get coordinates to an exact spot. A friend of mine said a couple weeks ago he had a great bite right here in this little cut, and it helps me to come right back to his old footsteps. It'll allow me to program into it different locations if I've been off fishing offshore or in the bay, and it'll memorize a lot of different fishing spots for me in the future. It has an interesting feature that allows me to know different charts around the world. It's called a Navionics card. In here is digitized programs of different charts and waterways around the world, and this particular one is for the South Gulf area. So I can just memorize different fishing spots and come back to it the next time. You know, the world of saltwater fly fishing is so amazing. There's so many options and there's so much fun things to do out here. It's a joy to come out and fish the surf this evening. And you know, I see a couple birds working out here to end this beautiful trip. I'm just going to go out and try to catch a couple. This is a nice little cut through the surf. There's a couple of sand humps out here to my side, but there's a little channel that's been cut in here, and it might hold some fish. You can see the birds diving on bait. It's always a great sign, of course, that there could be larger fish in there. Yeah, I got a little fish on. Beautiful way to finish a nice trip. Sunset in the surf. Cool. Nice little blue runner. Whoops. Yeah. That little cut in there is just keeping all the bait fish and all these nice sportsters in there with them. Beautiful evening. The saltwater world is amazing. There's just so much out here to enjoy. Got a wonderful trout on here, a nice speck, probably 18, 19 inches. come on to me. He's such a fatty, I can't hardly get my hand on him. Wow, gorgeous way to finish a trip. See you, buddy. See you again next time.
Steve Regev is the world's casting champion, holds national and world titles. Certainly a pleasure to see that man cast. When we come back, we'll be joining Lee Wolf in the Colorado Rocky Mountains. We'll be right back.
I think America's best trout streams begin in the mountains, high in the peaks of the Rockies. The winter snows pile up in abundance and melt with the warm spring sunshine to start a million tiny trickles that run down the slopes to merge into larger and larger flows. Bit by bit, they become miniature streams, cascading down the rocky cliffs and sometimes holding small trout. Joining together, they pause occasionally in crystal lakes to catch the sun and warm their waters. By the time the snow water reaches the valley floor, the myriad mountain trickles have become a full-fledged trout stream. These trout streams flow through meadows at a gentle pace, continually fed by bubbling springs that keep their waters cool. They flow swiftly over rocky shallows where their underwater insects can find food and shelter and a place to hide. These nymphs, as they are called, are the basic trout food and the heart of fly fishing. For these are the insects trout flies are made to represent. Every spring and summer, at a specific time, each nymph goes through an amazing change. It comes to the surface, often crawls out on a stick or stone, and changes from a living, swimming submarine to an air-breathing, flying insect. These flying insects, born of the water, must return to the water to lay their eggs. And when they either emerge or return to the stream and drift helplessly with the current, they fall easy prey to the trout. The dry fly fisherman must match the hatch. He must find and identify the insect upon which the trout are feeding at the moment and select the fly that closely imitates it. The light Cahill pattern in size 16 is very successful in the Rockies. To fool a trout, it must be tied to an almost invisible 2-pound test monofilament leader. With thousands of natural insects floating on the surface, every angler hopes to place his lone imitation so perfectly that it will fool a fish. In spite of the odds against it, it can be done. When an angler hooks a trout, even a small one, on such a small fly and light leader, he needs an expert's touch to play it. The fish will try every maneuver he knows to escape, and only a continuous, careful, delicate pressure can successfully tire him out. I enjoy catching these cutthroat trout, native to the Rockies, strong and active for their size. They're beautiful fighting fish. Only when their wild strength or their will to fight is spent can you get them to the net. I'm glad that nowadays most fly fishermen release their fish to fight another day and bring the same pleasure to some other angler.
Lee Wolf is a genuine fly fishing icon. I never tire of seeing that man fly fish. When we come back, we'll talk about personal watercraft and how they afford additional mobility in and around lakes, streams, and rivers. Don't go away. Stay tuned. Thanks for joining us today. I've been fishing from an inflatable drift boat. A boat like this, or a float tube, or a kick boat, certainly affords an angler even more mobility around lakes and streams. A nice feature this one has is the ability to stand up. You can sight cast when you can actually see a fish, or even cast a little further. This boat even features a release anchor. Be sure to join us again next week when we'll come back with even more fly fishing secrets. Fly Fishing Secrets is structured for individuals with a basic desire to expand their own fly fishing skills. Our fly fishing experts share their knowledge acquired over many years of personal experience. Each episode of today's program has been edited from a full-length instructional fly fishing film. To order these individual titles, or perhaps choose from our complete library of fly fishing films, call this toll-free number and inform the operator of your needs. While text and verbal rhetoric offer literal concepts that must be applied to an actual exploit, interactive media demonstrates visual guidance and conclusive evidence of true causes and effect. So tune in again next week for even more Fly Fishing Secrets.